I don't really talk about local politics a whole lot on this channel. I don't even know how many people who watch me also live in New York City as well. But this story definitely pissed me off enough to talk about what's going on in the city on this channel. Anyway, from The Guardian, New York's Governor Kathy Hochul is considering reimposing a ban on face masks in the Big Apple's transit system over allegations that masked protesters are taking advantage of identity-concealing face wear to stage anti-Semitic attacks. More fear-mongering over pro-Palestinian protesters. Of course, that's where this proposition stems from. Okay, have there been instances of genuine anti-Semites attempting to co-opt the cause and make it less about Palestinian lives being slaughtered by the tens of thousands, probably way more than that, honestly, considering all the rubble that has been yet to be dug through, and more about how all Jews are supposedly evil and using the genocide in Gaza as a means to justify their disgusting belief system. Yeah, I've mostly seen this online, namely Twitter, of course, where some Groiper douchebag is lambasting Israel, and then you go on their profile, and it's nothing but happy merchant images and blatant anti-Semitism, so you know that their opposition to the genocide is not coming from a genuine place of disgust, but rather stemming from vile bigotry. These people can't give a fuck less about the Palestinians, and again, they are using this genocide as nothing more than a means to make their terrible, terrible worldviews more palatable to the general public, and that should, of course, be opposed at all costs. But an overwhelming majority of people who are going out there and protesting are people who are genuinely disgusted by the slaughter of the Palestinian people, and they want to see this unjust slaughter cease. And most of the violence has come from outside agitators such as law enforcement or Zionist counter-protesters. And it is in the protesters' best interest to conceal their identities via face masks, because many of them have been doxxed or under police surveillance because they dare to be vocal in their opposition to this country arming and funding a blatant genocide. So this is a clear attempt to crack down on people practicing their First Amendment right to protest against an unjust action conducted by their government. Land of the free, am I right? And New York is totally this woke haven that so many right-wingers from the South, who probably have never even fucking stepped foot in the city, say it is. Anyway, beyond this being a clear violation of one's right to protest, this also raises a lot of concern regarding public health here in the city, because this would also include face masks that people have worn since the COVID pandemic hit. I was also reading an Associated Press article about this, and it says, the legislation, which has not yet been crafted, would include common sense exemptions, quote-unquote, for those who cover their faces for medical or religious reasons. And it just makes me wonder how exactly would this legislation be imposed in practice if it will be signed into law. Would one have to carry around a card or some shit signed by a medical professional proving that they're sick, and that's why they're wearing a face mask? Will there be law enforcement stationed in subways questioning everyone and anyone wearing a face mask and asking them to somehow prove that they are indeed sick and don't want to spread their sickness? And not to mention, there are still plenty of people here in the city who aren't sick but still want to wear a face mask because, let's be honest, this city is fucking disgusting. It feels like seemingly every other day I get an alert on my phone telling me that the air quality today is bad and harmful to breathe in. This city is easily one of the worst when it comes to pollution here in the Northeast because we have no shortage of cars, buses, trucks, industrial plants, etc., constantly fucking the air up and making it toxic to breathe in. And not to mention all the landfills we have here and people just frivolously throwing their garbage on the ground because they can't be fucked to find a garbage can or a recycling bin. So I don't blame anyone who resides in a city as dirty as this one for wanting to protect themselves at least somewhat from the harmful air that pollutes this city all the time. I personally still wear a mask when I'm taking public transit now. I only really take the bus, I very rarely go on the subway. And the subway is the focus of this legislation, but it's all still the MTA, and the MTA does not give one iota of a shit when it comes to keeping their buses, their trains, their subways, etc. clean. The buses are always dirty. It's not uncommon where I see trash on the floor or shit like gum be left on the seats. My rationale is I'm in a very cramped space around a bunch of strangers who obviously obviously have very little regard when it comes to public health and safety, and who fucking knows what some of them may be carrying. So when I'm getting on a bus, I am masking the fuck up, and I'd imagine the subway is even worse. But fuck the immunocompromised, right? If someone gets seriously ill or even dies as a result of catching a sickness from some stranger in public transit, oh well, they're just collateral damage, I guess. The real issue are all of these college kids opposing our arming and funding of a genocide. What a fucking ghoul. I bet it's so easy to just brush aside all of the health risks that plague this city from your ivory tower up in Albany. It was convenient to care about the immunocompromised back when the COVID pandemic first hit because it scored you political brownie points. But now that mostly everyone has forgotten about COVID, you're right back to just not giving a single fuck about these people and allowing them to be at serious risk of fucking dying. New York Democrats are really the worst. Kathy Hochul, Eric Adams, NYC's mayor, they're really not all that distinguishable from Republicans. Compare that to states such as Michigan or Minnesota, where Democrats only have a majority power by a thin margin. In those states, we've seen things like voter rights be extended, more extensive background checks when it comes to acquiring a gun, all students being entitled to free meals, LGBTQ+, and reproductive rights being expanded. Meanwhile, here in New York, a deep blue state, we have our politicians fear-mongering and feeding into Republican talking points about immigration and how all immigrants supposedly come here to commit crime. They're stealing our jobs. We need to deport these people now when a majority of them are merely asylum seekers and not contributing to some supposed crime wave. Complacency is a poison, and it has really affected the politicians in this state, especially. That's all I have to say. Bye-bye.